Hey, welcome to Ohio Real Estate. My name is Jason Ferrier, and I have an awesome guest with me today, Raymond, who is a viewer on my channel, and he has some awesome experience with real estate from a standpoint of being in a very tight market. He comes from an area west of me in Ohio, and Raymond has an awesome story to tell when it comes to functioning and actually finding real estate opportunities in a tight market despite where he lives. New listings are actually down in the county he lives in, which is Miami County. Lives there, and active listings are down 8% year over year. New listings are down 12% year over year, and the median price is now at $234,000, up 5%. So like a lot of other areas in the Midwest, certainly in Ohio, it's tough to find real estate. And I hear a lot of people on YouTube complain bellyache about not being able to find opportunities and not being able to find anything on the MLS or even on Zillow. But Raymond has a story that I thought was important for my viewers, certainly, and a lot of other people to hear on how he managed to move ahead and still make things happen in real estate. So Raymond joins me now. How you doing, Raymond?
I'm good, Jason. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you. All right. So my first question is, or earlier, I'd just like you to start off with how you got into real estate and kind of, from a 50,000 foot view, what's your journey been like?
Yeah, well, I come by it honestly. My dad's a builder, contractor. I grew up mudding and hanging drywall with him in the mid 2000s in my teens. I did end up, going off to college, and I have a career that's separate from real estate now, sort of a day job thing. And I just grew up building. So I come by it from a contractor construction perspective. My personal investment journey in real estate really started in earnest in 2022 when I was 32 years old, about to turn 33. At the time, little personal details, I was coming up on a year of sobriety from booze. I had struggled with that in my 20s and had to, clean up my act, sober up in 2021. And with that came some financial sobering up that I had to do. So I had about $60,000 in consumer debt, 25 of which was high interest credit card debt from my 20s. Just full disclosure there. So I spent the subsequent 8, 9, 10 months, I think, paying that off. I actually relocated from Columbus, Ohio. I was living in the Clintonville area, very desirable area, if you know Columbus. And I moved back in with my parents in the country here. Really hard to do at 32. Not the most pleasant experience.
Right.
And basically every dollar I made went towards paying off that debt that I had accrued. I did get it paid off, closed all the accounts. I did the Dave Ramsey thing. And it worked. The snowball worked. Did get me out of debt. I had no life. And at the end of it, I had no credit score and basically had money piling up. Was working gainfully employed. I was working remote because everyone sort of went remote in 2020. And I'm still working remote now. And I was just socking away cash, and I had been a renter my whole life. And of course, was living with family at the time. Thought, okay, it's time to buy a house. I need to put down some roots. I decided that I wanted to live here in Miami County. It's where I grew up. It's my home. I put 10 years into Columbus, the central Ohio area. I lived in New York City for a number of years in my 20s as well. But at turning 33, I was ready to put down more permanent roots. Talked to some mortgage companies at that time. And basically because I had paid off all that debt and closed all the accounts, no one would touch me. They wouldn't even do manual underwriting. So one thing to note is basically no lenders would help me out with manual underwriting. So that didn't really work for me. At the time I was contracting in a remote position. So I didn't have, in their eyes, the work history that would validate the loan, even though I, at that time, had about 12 years in my career. But yeah, at that time I had $20,000, $30,000 in the bank. I had a strong down payment. I was doing a lot of research. I was looking at houses. I was ready to buy something at the 150,000 mark, which in 2022, you could still find things in Miami County that were at that valuation. They were older, at least 50 years old. I was looking at a lot of ranches, a lot of not necessarily mid-century, but the Huber home, if you're familiar with that style of brick home. Huber Heights here in Montgomery, Miami County area was famous because he built all those homes. Is the brick basic 1,500 square feet, 3-bed, 1-bath brick home. It's just the standard Ohio ranch style house. I
Yep.
wanted to get one of those, maybe on a lot with a little bit of land. That was kind of the dream at the time. That didn't happen because I went to every bank I could. They weren't going to work. It was too fresh out of the debt. There was a charge-off, I settled and paid off. It was too new. Couldn't happen. And at the time in 2022, I was trying to, I decided maybe I'll look into renting. I looked at a dozen, maybe 2 dozen different kinds of properties to rent. And every single landlord wanted an egregious amount of not only background checks, but extensive credit history checks. They wanted earnest money deposits. They wanted first and last month's rent for Miami County, Ohio, for like $900 single family houses. They wanted like $4 or $5 grand. I mean, I had 30 in the bank, but they wanted so much. And none of them bought the fact that I was working a remote corporate job in Miami County, Ohio, because I don't know what the mindset was there really. That maybe they all got burned during COVID. They were all and I can understand that. They
Sure.
were all very tentative about renting to me. So it was a very odd situation I found myself in. I was pretty despondent. I was not looking, I didn't really want to go the roommate route again. In my early 30s, that kind of fell apart because the older you get, the more I realized the people who were still renting, if they were single, there was really, and they, there was kind of a reason they were. And maybe I fall into that category coming with my background. But, I didn't want to go try to find a roommate here because I didn't know anybody. Everybody from high school left. I didn't know anybody anymore. I didn't really have social connections here. I was living with my parents. And so I just kept stacking cash. And came to the point where I was sitting on like $35,000. And I was on Zillow pretty much every day looking at things. And I started thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this in the conventional sense. I'm not going to be able to follow, quote unquote, the rules of the game and buy into a 30-year, 15-year mortgage at a $150,000 house. That's not going to happen for me right now. Renting is proving to be kind of difficult. So what if I redefine my terms of success? And I started thinking, hey, wait a minute. Growing up, you were building houses with your old man. You were renovating houses. You were doing commercial construction. You were doing historic home restoration with him and his company. You already have all of this skill set. Why don't you start looking at sub $100,000 properties that need extensive repair, which are at the time were actually kind of plentiful in Miami County. I haven't looked recently. I'm sure they still are, but I'm talking $50,000 price range and total rehabs basically. And at that point in my life, I was ready to just kind of move. I wanted out of parents' house. I wanted my own place. I wanted my own sort of mission, something to actually do with my life, for lack of a better term, because I don't have a social life. I don't date. I don't have kids or a family or anything like that. So that's not really going on for me. So I need something else to focus on. I found numerous listings that were sub $100,000 on Zillow. Some that were under in that 50 to 60 price range, which I would take me a little bit longer to save up to, but I kept seeing them, pretty bad shape places. I happened to be driving through the city I bought my house in central Miami County on one day in like a September, I think. And I saw the for sale sign in front of one that looked pretty bad. I mean, if you look at the listing on Zillow right now, it looks terrible. Because the old photos are still there and everything. And I had actually looked at the place, but it was priced at $59,000. I didn't have that right now. Couldn't get a loan for that. Wasn't going to happen, but they had reduced it to 39. And I thought, okay, I'll go ahead and call the realtor. And I drove by and it looked adequate enough. It was walking distance to the park and the bike path and the river. It was a comfortable area, in my mind. And I went ahead and I viewed it, and it was in pretty bad shape. It had been a rental for decades, and
Right.
It needed completely rehab. The one side was falling into the ground, the foundation, there were some serious issues. And I just thought, okay, they initially listed this at 60. They're asking 39 now. I wonder if they'll come off another 10. And I just basically told him, I said, I'll offer 29 for the place. And he called her on the spot. That realtor called her that moment and told her that they offer. This was the listing agent. I didn't even have a realtor at this point. And she's like, well, let's go and go into contract and we'll make this work. Because I told him, I said, I have the cash to make this purchase work. And we closed in 14 days. Title search, everything came back fine. I did waive inspection because I looked through it myself for about an hour and a half before the realtor even got there. It was unlocked at the time. The front lock wasn't functional basically at that point. I closed on it, and then this was without my dad even looking at it, the builder and everything. I went to buy a new set of locks and put those on that first Friday that I owned it. And I remember trying to fiddle with that all night, and then finally getting that figured out and showing my dad the place, who's the builder. He's looking at this and that, and he's like, yeah, this could be a project for you, basically.
Right.
And that was October of 2022. And I purchased that house for $29,000. 2022, I'm pretty sure, was the height of transaction prices for this area. And I'm pretty sure that late summer area was the height. At the time, you couldn't find anything that wasn't a total rehab on Zillow in this area for under $200,000. There was no listings under $200,000. Now that has changed, but there was nothing under 200. And I closed it and I paid cash. And at the end of the day, I had a little bit of money left in the bank and a house. I basically spent about a month cleaning it out. I spent a week solid cleaning out all of the previous tenants' trash, basically. And there was trash in this basement, which is a full walk-in basement. It was up to my head, just old stuff, Christmas trees, boxes, whatever, life stuff over the decades.
Sure.
I found yearbooks from 1994, that sort of thing. I found old pictures. I found a set of Trans Am keys from the 70s. I found Polaroids they had to have been the 70s. It was a lot of garbage. Spent a week doing that, and then basically ripped out. I got to work. I moved in after I ripped out all the carpet and did a little bit of verification that like the plumbing worked and everything like that. And I moved in December of that year, and basically did a live-in rehab where I would section off a quarter of the house or a room of the house, knock out everything, knocked out all the plaster, took all the trim off, took off. I did most of this demo myself. Basically took it down to the studs room by room, and I fixed the foundation, made those repairs, jacked up the floor on the one end, about 2 inches actually overall, fixed a lean on one wall on the exterior. Like there was some significant, not catastrophic fixes, but definitely noticeable things that people would look at and say that would have been, this house falling over, the neighbor said. It wasn't. It just had a noticeable lean in one wall that I corrected.
Sure.
So significant heavy work the first 4 or 5 months. And mind you, it had I forget the term for it, but it was an old furnace. It was gas, but it would run nonstop because all of the windows were old wood and completely, even though I put like 10 mil plastic over it, 5 mil plastic, whatever it is, real thick stuff. Very, very cold that winter, really rough. Couple months living there by myself, kind of doing all this work. But when the weather really changed in 2023, I got real motivated and really hit it hard. Called up some electrical contractors, had that done, completely rewired the place because at that point I had almost all the plaster knocked out. I took it to the dump in a truck that I bought for this project. I found in 2022 a F-250, a 1995 F-250, 7.3 liter Power Stroke. I found it for like $5-ish grand, old farmer truck. And at the time you couldn't find those for 20. I was sent an assessment by the state of Ohio the next year because they didn't believe me that I only paid that much money for it. And they sent me a tax assessment for like a $20,000 vehicle. There was a lot of drama around it, but I've gotten pretty good at finding deals online. But half-ton truck, 8-foot bed, I filled it with trash, 50-gallon trash bags full of plaster over and over and over and over again, and took it to the dump here in Miami County. And I tracked I've been very meticulous about tracking how much work I've done on this place. The demo work itself, it was almost 6.5 tons worth of plaster demo itself that I took out.
So great story. Like I wrote some things down. So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to ask about this. You use the term redefine my success. I had to redefine my success. And so that struck me, but then it also struck me that you said carved out or sectioned off a corner of a room or one room or whatever to live in. It sounds like that was safe or, clean. And then as you worked on the rest of the place. So I want people to hear that. Like Raymond was able to, instead of going the traditional route, which wasn't working, he pivoted and said, how do I make this work regardless of what's going on in the market, regardless of roadblocks are there. And you had enough desire and, self-discipline to say, I'm just going to live in, I guess you got so tired of living with your parents. You're like, I'll just live in a room in an old house, which you did. And that's great. So I just want to commend you on that, because that's especially Generation Z folks that are looking for houses that are young right now could benefit from that type of process. And before you have kids, before you get settled in a school system, that's a good time to do it when you're flexible. And so that's great story, man, on that. So you paid cash for the first house, and then you paid cash for all the renovations.
Yes, cash flowed everything. And
Okay.
I do want to emphasize the home structurally, it is safe. It was
Yeah,
occupied a few months before I purchased it. It was living in a job site, room by
sure.
room. That's the biggest sacrifice that was made. Is they think like plasticed up doors, so you can't really have access. And I'm kind of a minimalist. I don't really own that much. I don't own I have a laptop. I can live out of a suitcase basically. I've got like a TV, an Xbox, a laptop. That's pretty much all I need. And yeah, I apologize. I forget your question, but I did want to make sure like I
You paid
emphasize.
cash for it. You paid
Yes,
cash for the
I did pay cash
for the
for it.
repairs.
It was a
Okay.
cash transaction. I did not take out any kind of equity loan or anything like that for the repairs. And I am on, I think, month 22 as of June of this project.
Okay.
So this has been, well, October minus June, 20 maybe. I don't know. It's been a year and a half. It's been at least 18 months that I've been living in this house while I'm renovating it. Not the house I'm sitting in right now, by the way,
Sure.
but it was a live-in renovation. And that is the biggest cost saver was I didn't have a monthly rent or mortgage payment I was making. My insurance, it was it wasn't expensive. It was about $116 a month. The utilities were high because before I put the new furnace in because the old furnace was inefficient. But the total, I think, monthly expenses to keep the house operational were only about $500. At the time, I was pulling in about between 7 and 12 grand contracting, web development.
Okay.
And that is something to note. I've got 15 years experience in my career. I can work remotely. I have a whole nother side to me that's not just renovating houses. Like there is a whole nother skill set that I use to make money. That's something that I do want to emphasize. I'm very cognizant of that fact. I quote unquote lucky, whatever. I put in the work to be able to command that kind of rate. Right now I'm making a little less and I'm putting a lot of money into retirement. There's some other things going on right now, but at the time I was making average about $10,000 a month. Did pay a lot of taxes on that, by the way, but I was making about 10 grand a month and I was cash flowing most of the repairs. I kept track of it in a spreadsheet. And I think right now I can look real fast. I am at a total of $47,484
Wow. So you've got this
above.
thing dialed in. Like you're 10x what I do. This is the part of my business, Raymond, that I fail. If there were, nobody would ever do this because it would be really boring. But if you did a fail army video of failed real estate practices, I'd be at the top of the list with details. I'm horrible at it. I'm trying to get better, but down to the dollar what you've spent, how much time you've spent, how much plaster you took out of the house to the dump. And by the way, knowing how much time you spent is important because I like the fact you did the work yourself. Some people may not have that skill, so they have to hire it out. But when you go get quotes from people, you should consult with others who have done the work themselves, and it takes way too long. So they end up spending a lot of time that they're not thinking they're spending on the house. And then the alternative is to outsource it. And sometimes the outsourcing costs aren't as bad as they think it is. And so that's, it's cool you did your own work. Some people may not be able to do that, but the fact that you know your numbers, I'm sure that really helps for you to make decisions.
Yeah, I've got now 3 years worth of receipts, probably about this high stacked of every single purchase for this house because
And did you buy everything at like the big box store or
yeah,
your materials?
Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's.
Okay. All right. So
My dad, he's been in the business for 30 plus years. There's really no price difference if you're doing home stuff. There's no price difference between buying it from a supply yard, unless you need specialty items that are special order. There's no price difference between big box stores and the supply yards. Actually, the supply yards are higher on stuff like sheetrock, and metal studs, to be honest. And a lot of times you can get lumber cheaper from Home Depot.
Yeah.
I do recommend getting your sheetrock from Home Depot because they stock USG. USG is the highest quality sheetrock. Got extensive experience in this because my dad's an interior finisher and interior contractor, and I spent a lot of time finishing growing up. I only used USG mud, and then the sheetrock I put in that house was all USG except for the back room, which I recently did. I went and bought the Pro Forma or whatever from Menards, $1 less, and it's significantly harder to work with. It was significant, but yeah, I did cash flow all of it. I keep very meticulous records. And the biggest, what you mentioned on the time thing, a lot of people do not want to live in a job site for 6 months, let alone a year and a half. That was the biggest thing that incentivized me to purchase my next house, which only took about 3 weeks to get move-in ready. And by move-in ready, I mean patch and repair, paint, new floors.
Okay.
So basically half of a typical flip, right? But
yeah,
I was hitting 20 months in that place in town, and living in a job site does get to you. And there's a lot of things that you don't get 100% done because you're still using the room or you're still living in the space. And, you're always cleaning up dust. When I was doing plaster work, I mean, there's still dust on certain electronics I have, certain things I have. A lot of people would not be able to tolerate this. And I do also want to emphasize, if I was dating, if I had a kid, and if I had a wife, I would not be able to do this. There's no way. There's no bringing back a girl to a job site. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. I mean, and it's not safe to have pets or kids in a place where there's no walls or there's a hole in the floor or there's a water. It's not safe. Do not recommend doing this.
Right. Yeah. Good advice.
I do want to emphasize that it's possible. I do not recommend it. And maybe I can talk a little bit about coming out of pretty heavy alcohol abuse in my 20s and early 30s. You learn to tolerate a lot of not really great conditions when you're not sober. And living in a job site for a year and a half was a walk in the park compared to what I went through to get dry, basically. And that's pretty much all I would really go into it. So this struggle in the last year and a half has been a lot more tolerable than that previous 12 years of struggle.
Well, yeah. I bet it was right.
Not to dwell on that very much, but I do want to inform my comments by stating that I did go through that struggle, and I'll own that. I'll say, that is something I deal with daily. It's a choice not to imbibe. And it's also a choice to go over and work on the house every day too. After I talk to you, I'm going to go over and work on the back wall a little bit more, and the house is still not done. I was roofing, doing the back porch got converted into a bedroom at some point, or not a bedroom, but a kitchen at some point in the past. I went ahead and just converted it again to a mud room in the back. It's about 16 by 11. I just hung it and finished it out. And then the roof on the back needed to be replaced and the header on the back needed to be rebuilt. And I went ahead and rebuilt that over the weekend, and I sheeted it with metal roofing. I did hire I did all that myself, but I did hire the second story part of the roof. I did hire that out because that was a project I could not do myself. So 2 things I did actually hire out and paid a lot of money for was the electrical and the roof. The roofers did it in 2 days, and it looks fantastic. It changed the block. It changed the lines of the house, everything about the house that looks, I painted it last year and I've got new windows in it, but once that new roof went on, they took off 4 layers of shingles, including the original wood shakers that were up top.
Whoa.
It had never been
Ohio.
redone.
Yikes.
It had never been redone. And it was 4 layers.
And what year was the house built?
So many. The oldest date I found for the structure, the original part of the structure, was on a Sanborn insurance map of Miami County. And it was 1858 was the oldest one I found. Now, this particular area of the county was settled in 1807. I'm assuming this house was originally built sometime between that 1810s and the 1850s. But what's really interesting is the maps I found over the decades show the block growing and kind of new builds and everything, but it also shows the footprints of these houses being changed and added onto. So the original footprint was just the front room of the house. And the timbers, there's still hand-hewn timbers in the foundation in that front area. Neat. So yeah, they're very big. They're 14 by 16, and you can see the chisel marks. I mean, it is solid.
And they're put together with are they put together with like pegs?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So they're pier and
Yeah.
beam. They're put together. Well, they slot them basically. It's not necessarily pegs, but you slot them and you put it on the stone. So it's built on stone foundation underneath. It's got a full walk-in basement. It's not refinished, but all the beams are original down there. The
Wow.
floor is actually in pretty good shape, which was something I got lucky on there. I just refinished it, put a new pergo down, hardwood pergo wood laminate. But you could see the footprint of the house change as they added on the side, and then they filled the lot basically with the building. So it's basically just the house and then a little backyard and a front yard. And they added a second story at some point, I'm guessing in the 1910s, because that's when the footprint of the house goes like kind of, it doubles basically. You see the second, and that's the area where the stairs are. So I'm assuming that side was put on and then the second story was put on top of the structure. So 1913, I think, was the last year I found. And then after that, the blocks and that city's kind of solidified at that point, and it's really just suburb growth after that. But yeah, 1850s to early 1900s was what I found. All of the plumbing was copper. The drain lines were actually in pretty good shape. The toilet drain lines, they were solid. And the flange for the toilet downstairs was actually welded to the copper. So I had to do some secondary plumbing on top of that. A lot of work that had to go into this. But yeah, the knob and tube wiring is all still,
right. I was going to ask about that.
And it was an issue. A couple months in, I remember sitting in my living room with my dad, and he said, "You got an electrical problem." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "It smells like fish in here." And he was right. It did smell like a dead animal. It smells like fish. If you smell fish and you have not been preparing fish or cooking fish, you have an electrical fire getting ready to happen. That means that your outlets are smoldering.
Wow.
So called the guys, some contractor buddies that are electricians, said, "Hey, I got an emergency here, an SOS. Help me out." We rewired the whole thing. It was about $5,000 in material, and I paid them. I think at total, I was in it about $9,000 with the labor on top of that.
It seems normal.
Yeah, it took about a month. The roof, by the way, the one that I had hired out was just over $12,000, and the footprint was 24 by 30, I think. But a second story, a lot of complex stuff happening up there, and of course, the demo was most of the cost. But yeah, roofs are expensive. That's
yeah.
And it's funny because the total material price for the rear downstairs roof that I just did was only about $650 plus my labor. And I only got myself a few times on my hand, and that was from tools slipping and cutting my fingers. And it wasn't from any of the materials itself. So I count myself pretty lucky there. But yeah, I do keep very good records. But
yeah, obviously.
The structure is old. All of the studs, they're true 2 inches, true 4 inches. Like it's solidly built.
Right.
Place. Foundation work I had to do was just because the grout had eroded over time in between the limestone. And I just re-grouted it and it was fine. I re-stuck it, whatever you call that. And I replaced some seal plates and repaired some wood down there. Put pressure treating and just put some fire treating down there as well. So nice solid foundation now. But yeah, all in it's almost $50,000 I put over and above, and that's including the labor for the roof and the electric over and above the purchase price. So I'm in at about $80,000. And speaking of the quote unquote affordable housing epidemic, when you think about the quality of finishes and new drywall, new paint, new windows, new electric, mostly new plumbing, new floors, laminate wood, it's very high quality floor. I liked it so much I put it in this house too. New roof, new everything for $80,000. Sure, I probably saved $50,000 in labor, especially with that demo work, which was pretty hard. $80,000 in cash for what I have now is pretty dang good. Yeah. I remember at one point I was demoing the plaster in the stairwell, and the pile of debris, I can probably send you some pictures. The pile of debris was at least 24 inches on each up the stairwell, up into the hallway and everything. Cause a 2-story house. I was stepping over that and tripping over that, and everything was falling. And I was trying to get this plaster off. and I was sweating. I was in a full Dickies jumpsuit, like overalls, the mask, got a respirator. I mean, full. I'm bald, so I didn't really have to worry about that, but I did have the dust in my beard. It was, for lack of a better term, it was hell. And I remember sitting there thinking, okay, because at the time, the only functional place to bathe was upstairs, and I was living in the downstairs front bedroom. And this was about 6, 7 months into owning the place. I think it was like that March or April of the following year. And I remember thinking, okay, I have to finish this today. Like, I have to get this cleared out of here. It was a Sunday, I think, and into the back of the truck, or at least into trash bags on the front porch. I have to do this because I can't use the bathroom if I don't do this. And something clicked in my head right there. And it was like, okay, I don't have a choice. And this is something that has to happen. I have to finish this house. And I liken it to like people who go through sobriety. They have a click moment where it says, okay, I don't have a choice. I can't drink. Or people that go through a spending problem or any kind of problem that you have in your life, or any kind of hardship that you have in your life. You reach a watershed moment where you realize there is no choice. There is either I struggle and fix this and do this and make this happen, or I don't go on. And when I realized that, I was filled with this like renewed strength and renewed energy. And not 2 months later, I was pretty much done with all of the hanging of the new sheetrock on the inside of the house. This is a 1,600 square foot house, 2-story, 3
Yeah,
bed.
it's a lot of work for one person.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I would basically fill all of my free time outside of work with working on this place. Nights, weekends. I don't take vacations. I don't really do anything but go to the store. I spend time with my parents. That's about it. I might be insane, but this is where I'm at in my life. But it has gotten me a fully habitable, very nice, new, basically up to new standards house, 1,600 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath house for $80,000 in one of the tightest markets. Now, granted, it's the Midwest, it's Ohio, it's a little less than the coast, but you can't find that now. That's 80s
Tight.
price.
Yeah. So you, once that's done completely, your plan is to sell it. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, plan is to sell it. And then you're sitting in one right now on this video where is that your next project? Or are you just going to keep doing this house by house by house and keep flipping them? Is that your goal?
So I'll answer your question by going on a little bit of a diatribe here to sort of give you some backstory. I originally went into this idea because I realized that I couldn't get conventional financing. So I wanted to find the cheapest way possible to inhabit a place to keep myself away from the elements, right? That's all a house is. It's a way to keep rain off your head and cold outside. I succeeded in finding the cheapest way to do that with zero debt. I, for the longest time, was determined to make this my primary residence for the indefinite future. I realized over the last year and a half that I didn't really want to live downtown. It's a few blocks away from the town square. It's a 30,000 person city. Like there's like 35,000 people that live here. It's the Midwest, it's small town vibes, right? Festivals every weekend. They just had their biggest one was this past weekend, first weekend in June. People who can put 2 and 2 together can figure out where I live. But the parking was always an issue. It doesn't have its own parking. I had a big truck and I have a separate car that I commute around in, little Vibe. Best car I've ever owned, by the way. 2003, I bought it for $1,400. Best value I've ever found. And that was in 2021. But, you know, I'm a block away from a pub that played live music. Given my backstory, I don't want to be that close to bars. It's not a good idea for me.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So over the course of a year and a half, I decided that I didn't really want to live in that location, but I need to finish the house. So I started looking into, okay, how's my credit looking after this year? You know, I did open a few credit cards and I used them very sparingly, keep very low balances, like $15 balances on it. I use Travis's beef jerky method. A shout out to Real Estate Mindset. I'm going to send these guys this video, by the way. Credit score is mid 700s now. So I was able to qualify for anything I wanted, basically conventional, anything I wanted mortgage product wise. And having no debt really, except for that small balance, and debt to income was 99%, right? Or inverse that, 1%, right?
Right.
I was able to qualify for up to $300,000 given my salary to move. Obviously, I don't want to take out a $300,000 loan at 7%. I started looking and I found a property that was on Zillow that was for sale by owner, not through a realtor. I had talked to a few realtors and I did look at a few properties. I looked at some duplexes and triplexes. I looked at some single family homes. I kind of liked the idea of sort of moving into the next property that didn't need as much extensive repair, but maybe had a double on the other side. They were paying rent. Ideally, we know how that goes. After mulling that over and looking at a few of these properties and meeting a few of the tenants, I decided that really wasn't going to be a fit for me. I needed to be outside of town. I wanted the quiet. I like living on a stretch of road where it's not constant traffic. I've got about a half an acre here. I found this lot. It had been for sale for a while, and he had it priced at about $150,000. It's a 950 square foot old, like pre-1910 old farmhouse, just craftsman style old farmhouse. It's on a well, it's on septic. It has an 1,100 square foot industrial shop that has a pad in it. I can put lifts in if I want. It's got 2-car bay garage. It used to be a grocery store in the 50s, I learned, for this little hamlet. And it served as a fill-up station in the 60s. There used to be a kerosene tank and a fuel tank out front. Both tanks have been removed, by the way, by previous owners in the past decades, and all of the well was re-drilled, so the water's completely safe. But the sign for the stop station is still out there. It's old rusty, just sitting in the trees there. It's really great. There's kind of like a romanticism about this old, like, kind of small house in the middle of nowhere. It's a hamlet. There's a few houses. It's a little neighborhood, basically, in the middle of the country. And I found it for sale by owner, $150,000. It was zoned commercial. And that was something I didn't really understand at the time. The loan officer I was talking to, he was in the mindset that I was looking at a conventional single family home, and he had me processed as first time home buyer, first time mortgage, single family, 5% down sort of deal. And he ran those numbers on this place. And after 2 weeks and a $650 appraiser fee, the appraiser came back and said, we can't mortgage this. We can't do this because we can't rebuild the house if it burns down, because it was a conventional Fannie Mae, whatever they call that, mortgage product. So again, I was hit with, you can't. And I had to go, okay, wait a minute. How about no, but, or you can't, but maybe this, or you and, like, let's do a conjuncture here and not just a period at the end of the sentence. So I started looking into other forms of financing. Went to a few local banks, ended up going to regional bank and getting a commercial loan for the lot. It's a higher rate. It's I think they call it a 360 or 365 loan, which is actually a better loan product for interest, I've found. And it's a 20-year commercial loan at 8%. It's 7.89, not the best rate, but I used the rate in my price negotiation, which is something I want people to hear. I went into this house and he was asking 149. And I looked at it and I was like, well, it is technically, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's move-in ready. The plumbing all works structurally. Nothing's wrong with it. All the windows, he had replaced half the windows. The others that are old aren't in bad shape. It just needs paint. It just needs the carpet ripped out. I can work with this. And the shop was something I was really interested in because it's a 40 by like 25 foot space. It's fantastic. I can't wait to renovate that and get something going out of the shop. So I got the commercial zoning and I went with the commercial loan. It is an ARM. My payment is $750 a month. It was very crucial for me to get a payment under $1,000 for this, principal and interest. I talked the seller down 26% off of his original list price because of the zoning, and the reason he was doing this for sale by owner was because of the zoning, and a normal realtor didn't want to work with him. I don't know that. I'm assuming that. Commercial realtors are expensive, right? So since it was a commercial property, he didn't want to go through a commercial realtor. But fine, we closed a month ago and I spent 3 weeks painting and doing some light wall repairs and laying a floor. I put the same floor in this house and basically the same color scheme, the brown, the white. The shingles here were actually, this was originally here. I actually really liked it. But I love the space. It's my own. It's a little bachelor hut in the middle of the country, right? And it's got an industrial shop on the land. It's half an acre. It's perfect. So it's a $90,000 note. It is an ARM. It's a $750 payment for 60 months. Coming back to your original question about what my plan is for the next one. Once I get the house in town done, I would like to list it, unless the market completely crashes in a month, which I don't know if it's that. I don't think that's going to actually happen. I would like to list it, see what I can get for it. If I get over a certain dollar amount, I will go ahead and pay off this place. I will probably wait 6 months to go ahead and make sure he doesn't get his commission pulled back or something like that. I don't know if that's how that works or not with these commercial loans, but I've heard that that's a thing. If you pay off the mortgage within 6 months, they lose their commission. That is also something I learned from YouTube. So who knows? It could be a lie. The plan would be to either pay this down significantly, like $50,000 worth significantly, or pay it off entirely. Because if I paid it down to about $33,000, it would amortize out at the current rate and payment in that 4.5-year time frame. So I wouldn't even have to worry about the adjustment. And I would just have a payment, a $750 payment. That's a pizza delivery job 4 nights a week.
I see.
It's not.
So you're planning for worst case.
So worst case scenario, I rent out the house I'm working on now, $1,600 a month. Hope the renter pays. I'm sure I'd find people that were fine, but I do know the woman that I bought the house from. She owns the property next door and the property across the street. Her grandson manages those properties, and he's had to evict 2 people out of the house across the street in a year's time frame that I lived there. So renters in this area, not the best. So again, going back to my comments earlier about trying to get landlords to work with me, I understand their trepidation. A lot different rental market than Columbus. It's when I was in Columbus, you could find an apartment reasonably, even a room reasonably, North Campus, great area, for $500. You could still find that in 2020. Maybe not now, but where I live is highly desirable and a lot going on. I don't think I'm going to have a problem selling, and I'll tell you why. The woman that owns the house on the other side of mine also just renovated it, and she had a tenant in there who I think there was some issues with drugs, I think, and they parted ways before the lease was up. I don't think it was an eviction. I think it was a mutual parting of ways. And she decided to just sell it. And she put 50 grand into it, she told me. I mean, she contracted everything out. And it's a beautiful house. It's about the same square footage as mine. It's 1,400 square feet, not 1,600. But she listed for $199 a week ago, in the end of May. Lowered the price after 2 days to $179. And as of yesterday, and a flurry of showings over the weekend, because I was there working on the roof, they are now in contract, I think pending at $179. So basically that next door is my comp. If they sell for $179, that's what I'm going to list for. That's where I'm at. So I'm watching that very closely.
Raymond, have you considered putting a tenant in at $1,600 and then just pulling equity out of it to pay off the arm if you could get a fixed rate on the rental property? I always tell people not to sell their real estate, but I understand what you're doing. That was one question. I guess the other thing was fixed rate on your arm. I mean, is it a 1-year arm or is it a 5-year arm?
It's a 5-1.
Yeah, that's normal. And the rate's not bad. A 789. I mean, I just refied something at just 789, and it's a fixed. Consider it still a commercial loan. That's not a horrible rate.
These are the rates.
Now you have debt. So now you have debt on this property. You haven't operated with debt, but it sounds like you've kind of used a combination of cash to get into things, get the train rolling, and then used a loan when it made sense.
Right. Because truth be told, I didn't want to move into another job site. I really wanted a month max of work to get something very nice. And this place is very nice. I like it. That's all that matters, is whether you like the property or not. It's your house. The debt situation, I was gung-ho Dave Ramsey, no debt, no debt, no debt. But I did run into a lot of problems with that lifestyle. Insurance being one of them. I can only get insurance through one company, and they know it. They are expensive. And it is what it is. My driving history, you can put 2 and 2 together. There's some issues, but insurance is expensive. I've had significant problems with employment since I paid off all my debt. There's background checks and things that happen with getting hired or converted W-9 or I-9 versus W-2. There are issues. The IRS sent me letters. There was some significant issues with the pay off all your debt thing. It's not all roses like they make it out to be in the Ramsey. I personally endorse paying off your high interest consumer debt as fast as possible. The rest of it, I can't get behind after living the results of it. The closing of the accounts was the biggest one that dinged me and brought me sub 500, which basically ruined my life for a year, financially speaking, right? Although it could be argued that it was something for the best, because at the end of the day, I have a house that only cost me $80,000.
Right.
But a lot of struggle, and a lot of people don't want to struggle. That's the biggest thing for me. Taking the L and taking out a mortgage was a cost benefit analysis of how much longer do I want to stay in this house neighborhood that I'm not exactly in love with. Also looking at the socioeconomic macro trends, political trends in the nation. Do I want to be in town? Not to get too tinfoil hat, but this was part of my equation. Do I want to be in town during November, post-November, that sort of thing? I want to get this house done and on the market before then, make a decision before November, whether I'm selling it or keeping it as a rental sort of thing. I would like to do that this summer. I can't do that if I'm still living in it. So I made this decision in December to buy the next place. And it's June now. And that's how long it's taken to get myself to this point.
Do you think you'll do it again? Do you think you'll like eventually say, oh, you sell that house in town, you're living in the one you like. Maybe you don't sell the one you're in now in this video, the second one. Maybe you don't sell that, but maybe down the road, do you want to go find another flip or a rental or something? Do you have the desire to do that?
I have thought a great deal about this. I'm probably going to stay put here for a while. I like the area. It's quiet, 20 minutes away from the folks. I'm closer to my brother. He's closer to Indiana. So I'm closer to family. It's important to me. I really like this place. I'll probably stay here for a while. If I'm sitting on $160,000 after realtor fees, and all of a sudden I see something that's an old Victorian farmhouse on 5 to 10 acres that needs rehab, I might pick that up. But I don't think I would want to necessarily do an entire flip again. Not from the condition that my other house was in. I will not do the $30,000 to $50,000 flip again. That's a long project, and it's basically your life. It's a lot of commitment, especially if you don't do it with debt and you don't do it with a bunch of contractors. Now, if I saw the right deal that was maybe a little under 100 and I saw the neighborhood was right, because I know Miami County very well, I'm from here, and the neighborhood was right and the school district was perfect, or it just needed that much work, or interest rates were so high no one wants it, and it's under 100 and I had it in the bank, or I could get a small loan for it, and I knew I could hire this out, do the other things myself and get 200 for it, maybe. But I'm not there yet. Right now, I'm really kind of focusing on finishing up the place in town and deciding what's next. I don't know. So I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm happy here in the country.
Well, it sounds like you have options and you're patient, which is great in real estate to be patient. And the fact, what I wrote down here was two things about the deal you found was a for sale by owner. Those are great to go after. And you use the fact that interest rates are high to get a lower price. You got a 26% discount, because one of the reasons it sounds like is because you explained to whoever, or part of your equation was, well, shoot, my mortgage payment is going to be this. It's 7.89. It's no longer 3%. So, I need a discount. And that makes complete sense. Yeah, it's a great story of perseverance, of doing something others won't do. I often question, I'll work with clients as a realtor that they say they want a house and they all want the same thing, which is move-in ready, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and they want to move in and they want it for a price that isn't realistic. And so oftentimes I'll explain to them a scenario like you've described, not maybe as difficult of a process, but still, I'm like, how bad do you want it? Like, how bad do you want a house? How bad do you want a house for your family? One of two things: you either are in a financial position that you can buy what you want, where you want, or if you can't do that, you're going to have to pivot and do something do something a little different. So what you've described is, I'm wondering, would you be open to me coming down and looking at it and like filming a little bit of like your house or the renovation you did?
Oh yeah,
that makes sense. But yeah, it'd be neat to see that.
Yeah, I took the second half of this month off work completely. So I'll be completely dedicated to it for the end of June. I want to get this done by the end of June. I'm very close. So whenever would be great in the next couple weeks. And I do want to note, I don't have granite countertops or stainless steel appliances now. I never have in my entire life.
I don't either.
Was never a goal of mine. And that is something I want people to understand is, We hear about this a lot on YouTube and in the discourse. The starter home now is 2,500 square feet, 5 bedrooms with perfect appliances in the perfect neighborhood, absolutely perfect from ground one. That's what people expect at 26 when they just went to, got their husband and they've got their kid on the way, and that's what they want. That's not necessarily what reality is. I mean, my grandparents, even they're both passed now, but they built a house in 1971 and it was bi-level, 3-bed, 1-bath, and the third bedroom was half the size of the room I'm sitting in right now. And this is not a large room. This is 16 by 11 room. It was
Right.
half of that. My dad could lay down and touch each wall with his foot and his fingers. They paid $31,000 for that new build. I mean, it's in a very highly desirable subdivision now, so it's appreciated almost $200,000 now. But that was the new build in 71. My parents bought their first house that was also a 100-plus-year-old place, the city north of Miami County here, in 1990 for $32,000. I mean, it was the start, and that's the house I grew up in. And we had significant issues in that house. I mean, I spent 2 years without drywall, I remember. That's why I got my drywall hung in 2 months, because I spent 2 years in a house growing up with no drywall. I've lived in this as a kid. I know what it's like, but there are ways to make housing affordable. It's not going to be pretty. And I will also note, I did try to do the social media engagement thing to make this thing go viral as a project. Never happened. No one was interested. That's also something you're not going to get. No one's going to care about the effort and time and work you put into something that's meaningful to you. That's something I've learned. They only care in so much as they can get something out of that. And that's fine. That's how life is. But if you're going into any kind of project, or you're looking at houses, or you're looking at real estate, or looking to make the next move in your life based on what you're seeing on Instagram or TikTok, it's cliche, but it's true. That's the wrong place to be putting your attention. I deleted all my social media, with the exception of YouTube, and like I YouTube comment sections, and there's like a few Discord servers I'm on. That's it. I got off of everything else. You got to stop looking at other people. I drive a 22-year-old car and my truck is 30 years old. Neither of those vehicles accelerate quickly enough for anyone on the road right now. I constantly get honked at and people blasting by me and tailgating. It's painful to drive 20 to 30-year-old vehicles. It's painful to live in a job site for a year and a half. It's very painful to spend every waking moment that isn't working. That's extremely hard to do. Most people don't want to do that. I had born into a family that my dad's a contractor, and I grew up around the trades, know the trades, or enough about the trades to be able to outsource things I don't know how to do to people who know how to do that. I have that skill set, but I also have a problem solving mindset where I get told no. I think, okay, you're told me no, but is actually, there's always an option 3. It's something I picked up on a couple years ago when I got sober, is I realized there's an option B to existence here. You don't have to just live in the major metro area, go to, I went to college. You don't have to do the college thing. You don't have to work a corporate job. Although I do work a corporate job, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do in the future, but I've had a career for 15 years, basically. But I do kind of want to pivot my life in another direction. So I might go off and do another one of these projects. I might not. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I'm still kind of in the fever frenzy of finishing up this place. I want to see how I feel once it's on the market and I know it's done.
You probably won't want to sell it. That's what happens to all my flips. After I'm done, I go, man, this place is so nice. I don't want to get rid of this thing. And but it's nice providing affordable housing for somebody that was and you help the whole neighborhood out. I'm sure neighbors appreciate the fact that it's, all renovated, and you're going to provide something for a family or an individual to live in that is affordable. And it is, even at your prices you're hoping to sell it for, it's underneath the median. So if you're selling a $200,000 house or a $190,000 house and the median's 234, it's like, well, that's under the median, and that's the sweet spot for flipping. I see a lot of people flip houses that are, they're like, oh, I want to find a vacation house to flip. And you're like, man, that's not where it's at. You got to flip an affordable house.
Right. The other part of that price equation is I looked up the Mortgage Rates Daily has a mortgage calculator on their site. And I went ahead and ran various price points at the current rates. And even at the upper sevens, with only 5% down on a 30-year conventional, with the property taxes and insurance imputed correctly per what I've paid in the last year and a half, the mortgage payment, principal and interest plus insurance and taxes, even at almost 8% and a 30-year conventional with 5% down, only comes out to about $1,492 a month.
So less than renting there.
Market rent for that place is $1,600 to $1,800. Calculation can look at that and think, okay, it's worth buying this.
Yeah, I mean that type of thought process is great. That you're not technically, I suppose, historically in real estate, but to have that type of foresight to go, well, let's find out what a buyer would actually pay for this house monthly if it's underneath the rental, which is rare to find now, right? I mean, that's all over the media and whatnot, is that rent is usually now more affordable than buying. But in your case, it's actually more affordable to buy it.
And
Minus, of course, the down payment. That's still equity, though.
well, even at a 5% down payment, and that's a $190,000 valuation. I'll be happy if I get 160 for it, right? So I'm betting on 190, but 160 is double my money.
Right.
I can't argue with that. And because I never took out any loan on this, there's nothing to pay off. And to your point, I mean, you could rent it out and take out a HELOC on it. But even when I was trying to buy the house I'm in right now, I looked at taking out a HELOC and the rate was like 12% for me.
Wow.
So it was up there.
Yeah.
Credit history is not perfect. I mean, that's just,
yeah.
I can't change that now. So
no. Raymond, this was awesome, man. This is great. I mean, like, just, I say awesome a lot, I guess. I tend to do that, but it's especially in this situation, just knowing where you came from, the struggles you've had personally, and then just with the house and everything you went through. And now to have that type of asset is really cool. And it shows, I mean, it's just scalability, right? Like if you're in a market where the median's 500, then the numbers are just different, but the concept would be the same. I love the fact that you say, hey, don't move. You don't need to move or be in that neighborhood you think you need to be in. Maybe you need to look outside that neighborhood. Yeah, there are hidden little pockets in areas that you can go target that other people may not be thinking of, and certainly houses people aren't thinking of to go after. So that's great. I would love to come down there. I don't think I'm going to make it in the next 2 weeks. I'm going out of town, but maybe it would be cool to see the house. Like maybe we could do this again and like see you could show us pictures of your finished product maybe.
Well, I can share those. Yeah, I can send you some process, not a ton. I can send you some process photos. It's mostly done. I mean, I just have to put a kitchen sink in and some doors, basically.
Or maybe some like old pictures of it when you first were cleaning it out. I'm sure you took pictures, and then some stuff, and we can do it again.
And worst case scenario, you come down when it's listed and look at it. That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to do that. Yeah, because I'm going out of town, but I could probably do it like in early July.
Yeah, it might. It's probably gonna be on the market then.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it, and maybe a buyer will see the video and like come run for it. You never know. People on YouTube think $190,000 house. They don't even compute to them. They're like, "What? Where is that? Like that doesn't even exist." And you're like, "Well, it does in some areas of the country."
That's one thing I ran into on social media when I was trying to like not brag but talk about my numbers. No one believes me. Especially in YouTube comments, because they don't know who you are. And I have been meaning to sit down and write up like narrative essay and then do a narration over like photos of the house and the process and everything. I should have taken a video of when I bought it. I should have taken a video. I didn't. I do regret doing that. But one thing I want to say before we get off the line here, if I could, one thing to aspiring home buyer, a young couple, a middle-aged couple. I'm 30. I'm going to be 36 this year. I'm half dead, basically. Us millennials, we're grown up now, and somebody in their 40s, maybe they don't even have a house yet. One thing I had to realize very painfully in my life was external validation doesn't matter. No one cares what you look like. No one cares what you wear, what you drive, where you live, especially with remote work now. No one cares about or thinks about you as much as you think about them thinking about you, right? So let go of the opinions of other people and try to find a way to live a life where you are the one who's content and you know that you're the one winning for your situation.
Great. Well, I love it. That's a great way to end, because you're dead on. You said it earlier, and that's even a better way to say it. Seeking the validation from others. It's a losing proposition. It definitely is. You don't need the granite countertops and the new appliances. And you don't
Water,
need the new car either.
water spills on everything exactly the same.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. Well, Raymond, listen, thank you for everything. Thank you for joining
Yeah, man.
the video today. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to see the finished product, and I'm excited for you to do really well with it. And my mindset is, what I'm thinking is, man, you got all these skills that a lot of investors and realtors don't even have. Like, you should keep going in real estate. Obviously you're detailed, which is good, and you know how to find a deal, and you know how to negotiate. You've done that a few times. So shoot, I would think your career in real estate could be awesome. So anyway, that's my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that, and I definitely appreciate the time. I know we ran pretty long here,
That's
so
okay.
Thank you for letting me ruminate, basically.
Yeah, I get it. That's funny. I love it. I love it. Thanks, Raymond. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you soon. I'm sure there may be viewers out there who have questions about how to get into this stuff. They're going to leave a comment on the channel, and then obviously I'll pass their information on to you. If it's somebody that wants to connect with you, you guys can connect.